of the Colors Organization, Men of Color United, and I live in Overbrook. And a fun fact, I don't know what's considered fun. I like to barbecue.
Can you barbecue?
Oh hell yes.
That's the question.
Oh hell
Liking
yes.
it and actually being able to do it. So
Oh, listen, you have to come to our cookout.
I would love to. Okay. Thank you. Who are you? What's your name?
I'm gonna
Did
just
you
tell
get
what
your
my
name?
name was just like that. Thank you very much.
Go ahead. Thank you.
My name is Jared. I'm born and raised in the Philly area. I now live in Overbrook Park, and I'm an author, self-published. Trying to write my second book. Well, finish that.
That's a fun fact.
Did you say?
That's a fun fact.
Yeah.
What is the book called?
It's called Pangea Unsettled Land.
Fantasy.
On
Uh,
Amazon.
my name is Brahim. I am an Instagram famous personality.
You gotta hear it. You can't hear it.
An Instagram personality. I work at Family Court, supervise the written service unit. Fun fact about me, I was on the Jerry Springer show 4 years ago.
Was you fighting?
Playboy.
Oh. Oh, so that's not
Wait, you were on there for real?
Yeah.
As a contestant, as someone
Contestant.
as a contestant, that's what it is.
Well, I was an actor, yeah. I was a filler. My aunt does that.
So people really
looking
be
for people.
acting on it?
Now,
That's
I
not
don't
real.
think that's still on. Maury is real. Jerry's not. Jerry is in between.
I thought it was awful.
You were a participant on the Jerry Springer show.
You were a participant on Jerry Springer.
I posted a picture of mom. You
Wow.
act like you didn't know. Go ahead, good time.
Good evening. My name is Tony Purnell. I'm a clinical therapist. I have my own practice. I work for the state.
You work for the state.
I work for the state.
Pennsylvania, do you? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, we need that loud. Yeah, I work for the state. Fun fact about myself, I make homemade pickles.
Wow.
Yeah, I make homemade pickles.
What's
You didn't bring any? Huh?
Did you bring any?
I did not bring any. No, I did not bring any. Spicy, sweet, traditional deal. Yeah, I make homemade pickles. All right.
I like spicy.
Okay.
Thank you for being here. So we're just introducing ourselves, guys. Going around, tell us your name, what you do, and a fun fact about yourself.
My name is Antoine Crawford. I am a nurse educator at a hospital. In Northeast, I work at Friends. What else?
Fun fact.
Fun fact about myself.
Oh.
A fun fact.
See, that's exactly my point.
I like art, and I think I'm a free spirit, so I think that's a fun fact.
Okay.
I used to get residents from Friends.
Ooh, Lord.
Yeah. That's not nice.
It's not
I got
nice.
a great guy from there.
Oh, no, it's great workers and great patients. One being me.
I was still great patient about this thing.
Jayla Taylor, tell us about yourself, your name, what you do, who you are, and a fun fact about yourself.
Okay. I'm hungry. I've eaten since 5 a.m. Sorry. My name is Jeremy, aka Tay. For a living, I am a respiratory practitioner. I specialize in the lungs for PIN. And on the side, I also have a small little business called Jayla Tate Entertainment. I throw events for LGBTQ people of color, and our allies and friends, and families and loved ones. Fun fact about me, I have been to all 50 states, and I've been to all of Eastern Europe, and all of the Caribbean. I travel. Is that a better way to say it?
Yeah, fun fact. I travel.
No, but that's every state.
Every state.
Which is the best state?
The best state? Shit. I don't know. I think there are parts of every state
To have their.
that, well, I've been to the cap, so I need to probably curb that with most of the states. I went to the capitals or the big cities, right? So I didn't get into like I went to the places where,
Yeah,
I feel the most safe.
yeah.
Even though I'm a bit fair skinned, I'm still,
You still, yeah.
I gotta be mindful of where I am. It's just real life.
Yeah.
It's what it is. So I mean, in Alabama, I'm not, gonna go in certain areas, but I will say, I discovered a lot of really cool things about this country, like Mobile, Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama, is almost 85% people of color, and it's run by mostly people of color. I was really surprised.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. I thought, Atlanta, everybody hears about that, but I thought that was a really cool fun fact about Alabama specifically. Most people don't know that. I didn't know that.
So we're here
I'm
for.
gonna be you when I grow up.
I actually had the opportunity to travel with Jay last year. To
Where?
Paris.
Listen, Paris, isn't that amazing? It's amazing how old it is.
It's amazing how old it is.
Yeah, listen, because we went to North, it's amazing.
It's just a city of art, just beautiful.
Yeah.
It's the only city that wasn't bombed, right? It was the only city that, when the Revolutionary War and all those world wars, that was not
It
bombed.
was not bombed, yeah.
Yeah. So they still are holding on to a lot of the relics.
Yeah,
This is
absolutely
so old.
amazing.
Oh, it's so old. I love that city.
So for tonight, the whole purpose of why we're here, the mission of the Bottom Line support group, what's the bottom line, right? We're talking about sexual health, we're talking about education, relationships, friendships, how to be better people. So we're talking about what is the bottom line. Do you have anything to add? Ryan is our co-facilitator this evening. He has joined us. Huh?
I'm from Action Wellness.
Mm-hmm. Action Wellness, in partnership with Colors Organization. So we have been given this great opportunity to run these monthly men's groups.
May I stop this a little?
Huh?
May I
Yeah.
stop this a little?
Oh, thank you, stopper. I forgot about that. Thank you. So last month we talked about fetishes.
You was nasty last time, but it's okay.
Almost.
So we talked about fetishes last month. Oh, kinks and fetishes.
Kinks, yeah.
And so we found out that there's a big difference between a kink and a fetish.
Yeah.
So we had a great discussion last month. Today we're gonna talk about something a little bit different. So by raising hands, who like masculine men? Who's attracted to masculine men? 1, 2, 3, 4. So. Okay. Some people say no, I don't like masculine men, or I don't like feminine men. I need somebody who has the perfect picture of trade, right? Or perfect picture of masculine. You said no.
I just I don't necessarily need them to be like a brick in that masculinity. I just need you, for me to, when I look at you, that's what I see, is masculine. That I don't need, behavior-wise, I need that to be on the same line as how I see you, but I don't need it to be like, like, that's over the top.
Okay, what is that?
The aggression.
Because we're gonna get into that tonight.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm asking. So we got the majority of the room be like masculine men.
I mean, I think that's subjective, right? I'm sorry, my mouth is open.
Oh no, enjoy all this food, please.
I think it's subjective when it comes to masculinity or the idea of what that is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that there's one specific way of most things anyway. But certainly as it relates to masculinity, I mean, what those things are, I mean, I don't think being masculine is the one that takes out the trash. It just doesn't come across to me. I think other pieces of that are, excuse me, my food is going on right now. Other pieces of that are, you want somebody just to be able to take care of themselves. To me, that's masculine.
Okay.
You are making your own way, doing your own thing, whether you're female or male. That is, to me, somewhat of a masculine trait. You are doing what you have to do to make things happen.
Okay. What about you, Brian? You like masculine men?
Yes.
Why?
I like all men except for feminine.
Except for feminine?
Yeah. Not overly feminine.
Oh, I was about to say. Not overly feminine.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you said so-so. Elaborate on that.
So I feel like
Drinks in the refrigerator.
I like what he said. For instance,
Jeremy.
Jeremy, I like what Jeremy said about how there's no one way to be masculine because there are no I think that's part of what goes into that. But yeah, no, I like kind of in between heading towards masculine, feeling more masculine feminine, but same thing. I don't like a break is not whatever.
Okay.
In between.
Oh, yes.
I need you to come this way.
Oh. You need me?
We can bring up like extra shit.
Yes.
Can we?
No, still left.
Yeah. So, we're gonna bring all the chairs into a circle. Switch them out a little bit. Yeah. There you go.
We can probably.
Thank you.
So I asked them when I did a quick little poll, who likes masculine men, right? You like masculine men? Deep me down, fuck me good, fuck me long, fuck me long, right? Oh, that's not, oh, that's not what,
Oh, that's not what it is.
I thought that's what that meant.
So
That's
part of
right.
the issue is defining, I think, is defining what is masculine.
Oh.
You said taking out paying your bills. If a woman pays their bills, does that mean she's masculine?
No, he was
I
saying
think-
that men and women, that's the definition for a real woman is paying her bills. A real
And then
man
his
is
question was,
paying it.
masculine, does that mean he takes out the trash? I don't necessarily think so, but there are plenty of women that take out the trash and pay their own bills. I think the problem occurs when we don't quite understand what it means and where it comes from to be masculine, to me as a black person.
Okay. As a black person, because that's not the dynamic.
That is another
We can talk about masculinity in our culture.
Right.
Sure.
So part of that derives from a lot of people don't really even have an understanding of where that comes from. A lot of it started, in slavery, where being masculine meant that you could do more work, meant that you would be more valuable to the slave owner.
Okay.
And this is translated over years and years and years, without us really thinking about where it came from, So
Yeah.
I think a lot of the issue begins with education, as always.
So, what's your name?
I'm telling you, you need to be educated to understand what a masculine is for you.
So to understand what it means to be a masculine black man by societal terms, you have to understand what it means. You have to understand the background because it's derived from where we came from and how this being black in general came about. So I don't think you can, if you don't understand that, what it means to be a black gay man or a black man in general today is derived from 300 years of history, then you will never be able to really truly grasp. You get what I'm saying?
But that's something that we all have a definition of what masculine is. And even if you understand all of that, are you saying that someone who did not have that education can't define what masculine is? To me, that therein lies the problem
I
with
agree
that.
with you. I don't think you have to go back to slavery to find what masculine is for you in your own sense.
For yourself,
So you
because
can understand what you mean, but what you get the idea, what people think of it right now, what it means to be masculine comes from something. Your ideas are not new. You create nothing. You have discovered nothing. You're not a scientist. Everything you get is secondhand. So what it means to be a black man, as much as you think because you're black and you've interacted with black people, is not really your idea, because what it means to be black is a whole concept. It was put onto us because there were never black people. The idea of being black is created. So
let's talk about, we talk about, in order to talk about masculinity, we have to have a working definition of it, right?
Right.
Oh, good. Thanks, Tony, for getting that out the word. So masculinity is a set of behaviors and practices that have been traditionally associated with men and manhood in our culture. This includes both positive and negative things. Masculinity is a set of behaviors and practices that have been traditionally associated with men and manhood in our culture. Includes both positive and negative things.
That definition is still a little bit, it's still missing pieces, which the masculinity was originally and traditionally based by sports and violence. So the more violent you were, the more of a man you were considered because you could fight, you could defend. War played a big part of it, and then sport played a big part of it too. As later, because we're not in those wars anymore. But the fact that it's missing from that definition.
So that's the whole piece about toxic masculinity, because that's the main point of tonight. Toxic masculinity. What is it? Where did it come from? Why is it an issue today?
Toxic masculinity, in my opinion, is an issue because it affects the way that we see all other genders. So if you see a man or the way that a man is supposed to be as masculine, this, that, and this, you're going to have a problem when there are other versions of that. And I think that's where the issue arises. So there's a problem with women because they're not men. There's a problem with transgender people because they don't fit into the norm. So the problem occurs is because you have this definition, and when you don't fit in it, you create societal norms based off of things that may not be true. It's just based off of what was made up about.
How many people were told by their parents, "You a man, you a little boy, man up, don't cry. You ain't supposed to cry. Don't show no emotions. We don't cry in this house. Don't do that." You were taught, some of us, as a very young age, to not show emotion.
Right.
No, I'm sorry, not to show any other emotion except anger, frustration, rage. Don't show no other emotions except being upset, being mad. You ain't allowed to show your sensitive side. You ain't allowed to cry. You ain't allowed to embrace my dad,
Right.
hug, kiss, love.
That's not.
Right? So when we talk about toxic masculinity, you were right about the whole violence thing. People promote this idea of being physically strong. That shows you're a man. You showing no emotion. Oh, you a man. Oh, you like to fight. Oh, okay, you a man. Don't be no sissy. Don't be no punk. Where did this toxic masculinity term come from? Why is it a problem today?
To me, it's about people who are insecure with their own masculinity. I think that sometimes people, they have this idea in their head of what masculinity is until you see someone else who may be a chef, but he ain't a real man because he doesn't have A, B, and C on my list. So how is it possible for one definition for what masculinity is, or toxic masculinity? How's there only one definition? That's like saying all. Then that's almost saying like all men are this, and this is what all men are.
That's what it is. That's exactly what it's saying.
But there's no.
It's about domination, humiliation, and control.
So the man who is at home raising the children while the wife is working is not a man. You feel me? There's holes all in that.
Let's talk about that.
To me, it's personally, it's toxic based on the rooms or the environments that it's in. So it can be masculine out on the street, but then it goes into a room or a meeting full of women who are talking about feminine-based issues, issues that masculine-based creatures would not understand, and the masculine energy dominating that room. I think that's when it becomes toxic because it's problematic in that point. And I think it's just situations like that make things toxic in its masculinity. But masculinity isn't what's toxic. It's just things that make it toxic.
Oh, and what are those things that make it toxic? How you doing? Yes, sir. What's your name?
Bruce,
Bruce. Thank you for doing this.
thank you. Intolerance.
Oh, ooh, okay. Let's talk more about the intolerance. Open it
Well,
up.
because you asked if people had been told to not show their sensitive side and to not do things like that, and that's the issue of intolerance. And the whole society works best when everyone is socialized into their place.
Okay.
And that's as far as your gender, your race, your economic position, everything works better when everybody stays in their lane, like a highway.
Gotcha.
And So when people deviate from that, the society in general will put forces on that person to conform to what the society wants them to be. And it's like the saying is that with racism that we don't need white people to be racist against us because we are so racist against ourselves
Absolutely.
in their place.
Okay.
And the same is true for masculinity or femininity for women.
Absolutely. So I just want to put the individuals come in the room, have plenty of food, because we can't take it back. Drinks for the refrigerator, popcorn, flavors, okay, sugar, salt, cheese. I want y'all to enjoy yourselves tonight because this is a special edition of the Bottom Line Support Group tonight. We're here to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Philadelphia Black Gay Pride. Woo woo! Philadelphia Pride. So we're doing a special edition of our support group. We changed locations for this month. I'm just gonna get used to it, y'all. We're gonna
Where
be
is your location normally?
our location is normally at the Colors Organization.
And when do you have it normally?
The fourth Wednesday, the last Wednesday of
Wednesday,
every
yeah.
month, okay?
You sure about that?
Yes, the last Wednesday of every month, okay? From 5:30 to 7. Group starts at 5:30 for refreshments to 6. Group starts at 6.
And
Okay?
if not, then I'll look you up where.
You can find me at Tony Purnell Lightworker. Okay, that is my handle.
What is
Or
it?
the Tony Purnell Lightworker.
Light worker.
Light worker. We are light.
L-I-G-H-T?
Yeah,
Worker.
light worker. And
At what?
Tonight's subject is toxic
I'm
masculinity.
talking about coming to group on time today.
So, people, listen, I appreciate you all participating here. Okay, but get some food. Let's talk about this thing. Let's open this thing up.
I like what he said about people. The reason that it may exist is because people are, I forget the word he used.
Intolerant.
Intolerant, yes. I think that's really true. Which gives strength to the adage that people who bark the loudest against homosexuality are normally the ones that are dealing with it in them own selves. Because I find that when I've come across straight people who are very comfortable with sexuality, they're never found with homosexuals. Ain't like that.
Right.
They're very friendly. I think we also play into that intolerance
Yeah.
because when we come across straight people who are very tolerant, we want to cast them as they must be curious,
Oh, okay.
or they might be gay on the low. They're not. They're just cool with you. They don't have a problem with you being.
But I think that there's a lot of
We're so
insecurity
used
in
to people
that.
being intolerant, and when people embrace us, we question it, and that can also cause, or we out them because they were curious.
Okay.
My issue with that is that people are insecure when they feel like they feel threatened by something that you're doing. If you had a life, you wouldn't care what I did with mine. If you were very secure in your situation, you wouldn't care what I was doing. But when you're so worried about what I'm doing, how much power am I having over you when you feel like you need to readjust my way of thinking? When you're telling me that what I'm doing is not quite enough, you're so concerned with what I'm doing that it has rocked your world, then that tells me that the insecurity that you're feeling, that something is not right with you, and I agree with you. And that, when you find someone who's very comfortable, like straight men around gay men, then it's like, oh, a little liquor and he'll be all ready. See, first of all,
That's not all the way false.
but the issue, but the issue is that I don't want him anyway, whether he's intoxicated or not.
Right.
But for you to think that just because he's your friend and happens to be straight, that at some point, and he's always around you and your gay friends, that but it's going to happen.
I think a part of the issue is people have a problem accepting the spectrum. Your sexual.
Come on, AJ.
I think your sexual orientation is a spectrum, and I think calling yourself gay, homosexual, bisexual is because they're so, what is the word, regimen.
Rigid,
They're
okay.
like boxes, even though it's a spectrum,
Rigid.
you're still putting yourself in the box.
Right.
So have sex with a man one time, drunk or not, does that make you gay? That just means you had sex with a man. It is not us for us to determine where another person is or where another person should be. I mean, like I said before, I think the main problem is kind of like, it's because it causes us to think in a box. It causes us not to devalue men that do not act hyper masculine. It causes us to devalue femininity or things that are not masculine. But it's a socialized thing, and I think it's just amazing how much people think that it's real, when really what it means to be masculine is all made up. It's not a fact. I mean, I understand what you were coming from, but what I would disagree, instead of saying people are ignorant, they're just not knowledgeable. Like, you can't fault a
Well, I
person.
said they're ignorant to it.
You said, well, I'm sorry, insecure.
Yeah.
I don't think all people are insecure. I just don't think they know better. So if somebody tells you when you're growing up that, if you drop a mirror, you'll have bad luck. All your life you think about it. It's not because you have some problem, it's because that's what you were taught. And I think
So you're talking about exposure
right.
when we're young?
So
Shapes who we are, shapes who we are now?
Right, so even when you think about when you're young, you think about a little girl, she gets a lot of practice being nurturing by playing with dolls, playing house, cooking, that kind of thing. And you really think about, I thought about it myself, well, when was the practice that I have as a young boy to be nurturing? And really the only thing I could think about is having a doll.
Okay.
I guess that came up because I was thinking about having a kid and how it would be different, blah, 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 and if I would have a boy, because I want to have a boy, and how I would raise him differently, but it all begins, like you said, from where you kind of raise people in knowledge.
Well, I have a question about what you just said.
Go ahead.
So you're saying if we can't define somebody having sex with a man as being gay all the time, well, how many times having sex? How many sexual?
I don't think it's up for us to decide.
You know what? That's a good point, because there's some men who are molested.
Absolutely.
And what they learned is the molestation is sex, and that's what they know how to do. But does that necessarily mean that they were gay because that's the sex they know? Some straight men have been molested, and that's what they knew how to do, and that's what they did. And then all of a sudden they start liking women, or they have a relation with a woman, and all of a sudden, oh, he's confused.
Okay.
He may not have been confused if his initiation to sex was molestation. And even if it wasn't, even if it wasn't tragic, if that was pleasing to him, this is what he knew how to please himself. So this is what he did. And I'm not saying across the board, but I'm saying that there's a pocket of people.
But that goes back to what Antoine was saying about the spectrum.
Yeah.
I think we have been made to believe that things have to be, our whole lives are in this regimented way,
Right.
regardless if we accept it or not. You go to work, you come home, you clock in, you go. All these things are all these boxes in our life, and we do that with even sexuality and orientation.
I think we've also been misled to think that we really have the power to label it by what it would really be.
Absolutely.
I don't think we really can recognize what it truly is and what attraction.
Why do you care?
Yeah, so that's what I always
We
think.
can't.
I know I had a real life experience with someone else, a friend of mine. He was curious, and we experimented several times. And at the time, in my young gay self, I was like, oh, I snapped it.
Check.
But reality set in after the third time, and several months later, they're like, can we talk? I'm like, sure. And he legit sat me down like Oprah. And I was like, I thought about our experiences and what we've done. And this is not the life I choose for myself.
Okay.
I like women. I tried
Women.
Yeah. I was like, oh.
That is so dumb.
I was like, you like women used to, so we can't do it no more. But no, he was like legit, I don't want to change nothing between us. I don't feel like I'm gay. I just want to see what it's like. And I prefer women. And I was like, cool.
He has something to say first.
And he's married, has kids now, and it was what it was.
Go ahead. What's your name?
Daryl. What can I say? What am I not allowed to say?
Okay.
This is a
Well,
safe space.
No.
You
I
might
just
be-
Well, I was gonna say a lot of the like identifying people was about it's full like power structure at that because you're like, oh, I'm this, I'm that, and
So
secretly, like, I mean, we all in our mind are just like, this is higher than that, this is better than that, this is more attractive than that. So if you're like, oh, I'm bisexual, that's not as bad as gay. You know, and when you first come out, you're like, oh, I'm bi. That's more acceptable than this. That's why we come up with the categories. And also with the masculinity, there's two toxic masculinity. There's two big things about that we've not talked about. Which is part of it is the power structure too, and identifying that okay, I'm more male than you, but also it's a hatred of women, like because like you like at its core, and also that's like women are less than. There's so many layers to that nobody ever gets to. I'm just like, so if you're like a woman, then you're less than a man. So then you're like, oh, I'm more manly than you, and it's all about having power. It's like nobody ever talks about
But
like,
if you're also effeminate,
yeah, that's because you're like a
That's
woman. And
absolutely better.
you're like a woman. You're like a woman, and that's you're less than me because I'm a man, and that's a whole.
So I
that's,
guess, I mean, my question is for Francois back at that. Luckily, you were like lucky enough to meet an emotionally intelligent person that can have that conversation. So that goes back to me saying that it's about education. Like not most, I can't even say how many people, but some people are not able to say, you know, sit back and have a conversation and say X, Y, and Z. My question to you is, why do you view it as a snag? Because I think I'm a snag and I'm not gay. He's a snag. He's not gay. All these people that I know are snags.
No. I said at that time.
Yeah, I know.
In my young gay mind, it was always the prize
Can
to
you
get a
explain the
straight
thinking
boy.
of that?
So yeah, as a gay person, some people as grown gay people, they say that. But
come on.
But in my immature mind, I thought that, you know, if I could get a straight boy, then I'm really bad. You know, or
you bad.
You know, or my gaydar is so or my and let's be real, it's deception, it's manipulation, it's you groom this person to be comfortable with you. We all know what I'm doing.
That you know what?
We gonna smoke weed with them. You don't smoke weed at no point ever.
That's also cocktails. It's also cocktails. You're not even a drinker, but you're always drinking with them.
You can find joy in something at least.
Yeah, or they like my friend was Muslim. I was fire baptized apostolic, but I went to the masjid during that friendship. You know what I mean? So it was
during that
listen. That's what I'm saying, but you know, but you're trying to make yourself become something that they're going to be attracted to, and in part I feel like you know they like women, so you even try to do things that you feel like you would want a woman to do. You even womanize yourself just so you can have that open that door for that experience.
Well, some of us were already womanly.
That one.
Clarify, you say some of us were.
Oh, man, yes, we stop.
Ourselves.
We promote our other nature.
But I think this also still takes away from the fact that sexuality is a spectrum.
It is a spectrum.
And
it has nothing to do with
Point
taken.
But you know, it's the spectrum.
You might
also
also
like Angela.
This is a
Okay,
you can
what
jump
he's
in.
saying. I didn't force him to do anything. He still did it on his own volition.
Well,
But, you know.
Can I say like a lot of things of chasing straight guys is part of it is about acceptance too, because you're like you want their approval like on a deeper level too. It's like you want their approval. Because it's the straight guy, right?
Yeah.
They bullied you your entire life. If you can get them to be like to come down to your level
Then you
and
win.
to even just accept you on a sexual level, that's the thing. I don't think that's. I think that's a lot. I think that's a lot more to chase than you think about. It's not about like I'm gonna pull this thing that's hard to get because it's hard to get gay guys out there. But the whole thing is.
Even with that, it's about control, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people think, oh, the opioid epidemic, that's the biggest thing right now. No, control is the biggest drug in our society right now. You would do anything to get that control, anything to keep and maintain that control. So when I don't have it, say, oh, I got old homeboy. In a sense, I got the upper hand. Whether I'm downing myself in a feminine way, make myself more feminine to get this more masculine, I'm still in control, whether you realize or not. The whole point about this toxic masculinity, and so we already defined masculinity. Toxic masculinity is a loose term that is used to refer a subset of those behaviors which are harmful and destructive. right? The behaviors are harmful and destructive. They describe being linked to humiliation, domination, and control. Humiliation, domination, and control.
Can I bounce something off
Yes,
that?
sir.
From what you guys were saying, so you were saying that you were talking a lot about insecurity, and you were talking about a lot of the need for education and the need for overcoming that ignorance. Do you guys feel like those would be mixed together somehow? Because I don't view those as two totally different things. I feel like when you put those together, you get the feeling of being threatened.
So
you get people saying.
So the only reason I even brought up something to his comment is because I felt like it put too much on the person, and like it kind of, even though it's not the same thing, and I hate when people compare being black and being gay, but to me it kind of, it's almost like saying that black people shouldn't be worried about slavery now because of X, Y. Like I feel like it puts too much on the person when really people are socialized and we forget that all of this stuff is created, So I just feel like I feel like his statement should emphasize a little bit more of the things that people don't seem to have so much of a choice on.
I hear you. And the reason I wanted to bounce off of that is because I do feel like a lot of it's a threat, and I was wondering if you guys had that same experience where
You said threat or
threat, like
Right.
you feel threatened, where they say like this is the only way I know how to be masculine or be
Right.
whatever.
Right.
So they're very insecure about that because that's all they know. So that when something comes along and challenges it, they don't know that there are these other ways to also be this thing. So that's why they immediately have to reject it and say no.
That's a good
That's
Now,
the wrong way.
not to go too off topic, but I feel like it plays into the hypermasculinity a little bit. We've had a conversation amongst ourselves about how with white people, you guys tend. You're white, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Too late, Ed. Wait, you got to
It's like
go.
this is I just want to make sure before I say before.
He could be Latino, I don't know.
But they
But okay, so listen. So so we were talking about how in white culture, it's hard to tell when men are gay or when men are straight because we think because of how they're raised, the nurture part. So a lot of straight white men can be very much emotional, can be feminine in ways, sensitive. What we view as feminine or sensitive.
Okay.
Where in black culture, even before you come, in most cases,
Come on.
before you become out gay, you playing a tough role. Like you know what I mean? Like we have, it seems to be more prevalent on our side. So I don't know if there's a difference in how we're raised. Are we raised to be tougher? Religion.
Well, no, it's about freedom, though. It's about
It's about class
Well,
too.
yeah. If you're safe
But I guess my question
already,
is, why is there
you're-
such a contrast between?
I think because you're allowed. Because of, we are still based in our ancestors that just dealt with slavery. I do say just.
Okay.
So slavery is still a recent thing as to human history. To where we are still ingrained with genetics from those generations who dealt with that trauma. So we're still accessing a lot of that trauma in these generations now.
I want to get Will because he had.
And what would you think?
I mean, I agree with you. I'm not sure. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I do agree that there's a lot of what's the term for it? Like inherited trauma from intergenerational trauma.
That's right.
And I feel like it's a very real thing that happens as well. So yeah, I do feel like there's a difference where I see you say
The contrast.
I feel like there's a difference, but I also feel like in general, as gay people, whether black, white, whatever, we idealize masculinity. And I think we can do a better job of appreciating the fact that we're gay, and it's a special thing. White men have you might not like a thug with a chain and whatever that may be that you have here, but you like y'all call them jocks. So I think gay men in general, we may not be socialized like them and act the same way, but white people have masculinity.
But they're allowed. There's
Wait,
some people
one
that are
second.
allowed.
Before we go there, Will, you have something to say?
I did.
Come on in. The
What's your
contrast.
Francois. When Francois made the statement about the difference between black and white people, for me, or my lived experience, I feel that black people operate from a struggle perspective, wherein we're taught that struggle survival, everything you gotta work hard, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, you got strength based because all we know is suffer. Or being held in some kind of bondage or hostage kind of situation, wherein white people, in my experience, raise their children to say, you're going to go to college, you're going to be this, you're going to be that, or you marry rich. You know what I mean? Use what you got to get what you want, where all we know is struggle and sacrifice. You know what I mean? For me, growing up, every time my mom had a boyfriend, I had a new dad. And then, and I got
my dad from that
we had like, oh, this is Uncle so this your new dad is just what it was. And then as getting a new dad, we got new siblings because she was knocked up, she was further murdered. But that was my mom nonetheless. And I say that through that, like with her being in drug addiction and she always dated like alcoholics. So like she's on downers, they're on uppers, and you being in these rowdy kind of situations, it was, I'm going to teach you to be better than me, or I'm going to teach like, and then I feel like my mother always knew that I was going to be gay because she was so, like I was 5 years, I've been cooking since I was 5 years old, seeing it on milk crates or buckets, plucking string beans, cleaning greens and stuff like that because my mom was a drug addict and her first initial statement to me was, I am going to raise you this so no man or woman had to take care of you. And it's the girl next door. My mom would, listen, then, like I had, like my first bike, I had a yellow and black kit bike, remember it like it was yesterday. You know, boy bikes got the bar across the middle, girls bikes got the edge.
Yes.
No. And then the girl's bike had that long bucket seat. She didn't have a basket. But she was red, white, and blue with stars because my sister liked Wonder Woman. Low key, me too. Because I would be in the rip, do that little spin and listen. So you know, like growing up and just like, cause I'm going to like be all over the place because there was so much that people touched on. My uncles fought in the Vietnam War. So, mind you, I grew up in 1970, I was born in 1973, and I'm coming home, you know, like late 70s, early 80s. My first haircut was in the 2nd grade. All I knew was to sit and shut my down and twirl my hair. Like, my hair was longer than his up until the point where my mom and my dad at the time. But they had this, so they had this nasty fallout, and my mom left the house. So, because my mom would always, like, put my hair in cornrows or little plaits at night, come out in the morning, and you know, ouch. Out through one of the projects, so our living room and kitchen was on the 1st floor, then on the 3rd floor was where we slept at. So he's sitting on the steps, he grabs, and he said, come here, and I said, no. He said, come here, and the next thing I know, he grabs me and puts me between his legs and locks his ankles. So because I'm short, like my waist and thighs are like here at his knees, and so now I'm throwing this tantrum, and he was like, shut up and be a man. And next thing you know, because I continued to throw the tantrum, he pulled my pants down and beat me with a wave brush. And as I kept praying, he said, shut up before I give you something to fucking cry for. And he said, now fix yourself. So I fixed my clothes, and then he grabbed me again and took the naked clippers and shaved my head bald. Like my head was as bald as my forehead. So like that was my first traumatic experience, like even with a haircut. You know, and then it caused me to like be resistant or like have a strong dislike for men or masculinity, so to speak. Like, and then it was crazy because I was like, you treat me like this, but bitch, you can't read or write. And you always have all of these dreams about numbers and stuff, and I'm 7 or 8 years old. No, you laughing, but bitch, and now I'm in the, not bitch, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean? So now he telling me about dreams, and I'm spelling be queen, yes, because I'm a little faggy little boy. So now I'm going through the numbers book, checking out. I dreamt about snakes and alligators. So now I'm in the book reading what snakes is. So snakes is 048, alligators is 576. You know, calling him out the numbers so he can go play the lottery. Bitch, for him to gamble the money away to play all the lottery again after I helped you win because you can't read or write. But mind you, can't read or write, but you can. He drove for United Van Company that used to be down in Richard Allen Project. How you can't read, but you can drive and travel the world? Wow. I couldn't understand it.
But don't you think that and I'm gonna stay?
No, but the other part was like my uncles, because my mom had 2 daughters before me, so then it was so all she knew was to nurture little girls. Well, she probably wanted another daughter, and she kind of had fast got it. But I've always played with like babies, and my uncles, because I sucked my thumb, it was like, he gonna grow up and be a faggot. You need to stop treating him like that because he need to know how to be a man. And then, you know, because I'll be 46 Sunday. Hey, growing up, thank you. You know, all in the 70s and early 80s, all your shorts came up here.
Yes.
And so I was a pudgy little boy, and all the grown men will always say, he gonna be a little faggot, or you better not never let him get locked up because they gonna rape him in prison or they gonna make him a bitch. And so like it always made me resistant to heterosexual men. Like I would always be standoffish or like just be in the cut watching people because I was comfortable in who I was and how I was, not knowing necessarily what it was, but I knew I didn't really like girls. I knew I always liked boys, so when we played house, they always made me the mom because they had long hair and played with our babies. But like, just going through all of that stuff, even today, like when people are like overly masculine, I'm like, all right, here we come with the shit. You know what I mean? You know.
Just perspective.
Yeah, perspective is like bringing it like it's going to be a whole bunch of stuff. And then even when you talk about the part of like cocktails or smoking with straight boys and you can get them, 1 year, like for 3 years, we had a straight guy work with us at Colors at these. And him and she was his fiance at the time, and they would always go through stuff. And so me, you know, I got the male's perspective and I got the female's perspective because I'm faggot. Or at least I'm not mine, that's what looking at it as. And he and I got really close because I taught him how to be affectionate to his wife and not through a like touching or embracing kind of thing. It's like, yo, she's a woman, she needs this, like buy her flowers, buy her cake. Like I was sharing with him from the female perspective of if I was a woman, what would make me feel great. And those things like kept their marriage together and they made me the godfather to their son. So like, and then it was crazy because all my coworkers were like, he ain't gay, but you know, he did just get out of jail. And I feel like if he wanted to have anybody, it would be you because y'all close. And like, I never looked at people in a sexualization kind of way. Like, I don't see you as somebody I want to fuck first. I want to get to know people and all that kind of stuff. And it's crazy because that changed the whole dynamic again in relationships and how you look at people when you start bringing up toxic stuff because now you're not even a person, you're just somebody I want to sleep with.
Well, sometimes I do look at people as like, I'm gonna fuck them.
I mean,
right in the middle.
You know what my
That's just honest. I mean, sometimes I look at them, oh, I want to fuck you. Or, but you know what? But that's beyond the point. The point is, I mean, listen. But we all have had lived experience in some way, shape, or form when we talk about toxic masculinity. But the whole point of this whole conversation is how do we remove those destructive behaviors and patterns that are happening in this community?
I have two things. One is that when we were talking about the white and black and how black men are more pushed toward toxic masculinity, where whites are not necessarily as pushed as hard, and that's because they're allowed to. They're allowed to cry. They're allowed to, there's certain things they're allowed to do that they're allowed to express themselves. You know, if you look at the way they're being raised today, it's like, oh, buddy, it's very catering to instead of I'll be driving home. I drove home one day, and this I guess he was the boy's father. The boy was crying, and he punched him in the chest and told him, "Be a man and stop crying." And he was all of 3. He was all of 3 years old. And therein lies the problem is that the expectation is as for me as a gay person raising a child, like I have a daughter and a son. My son was allowed to cry. My son was allowed to, like, he gives me a kiss when he sees me, but that's not something I force upon him. That's something that he feels comfortable enough to be. So he's able to embrace who he is as a person, and I have not hindered him to one way or the other. So I think it's in the rearing of your children. If you're going to be a parent, then you need to be the parent that allows your daughter to play football if that's what she wants to do, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she's a dyke.
Right. Who was the quarterback from the Patriots? What's his name? Brady. So they had this big article on Brady about how his relationship with his son, because it was on camera about him you gonna kiss me before you leave, say goodbye, and kissed him in the mouth and everything. I think it was like 8 or 9 or something, and the public went off.
Yeah, I don't like kids kissing.
They went off.
Will Smith too. He did it to Jada.
Exactly. And so it's more of a public thing than an internal thing. Why is it a problem now?
Well, I feel like that's different. That's like sexualizing.
I don't think you're saying
sexualizing.
Yeah, like that's a completely different animal.
So
that's a sexualization and anti-sexualization of children.
I remember the documentary on Lyndon Johnson when he was first going away to Congress, and his father they showed us on film, him and his father, he kissed him on the lips. You know, that in history, men have traditionally been more affectionate with each other. One of the controversy about Abraham Lincoln being gay, because of the letters that he wrote to his, I think his Secretary of State. But men did that with one another, speaking of loving one another, co-workers, and masculine, presumably straight men, because and as part of the devaluation of women, because they didn't do that with their wives.
Oh.
They didn't treat their wives with respect.
They were ownership.
Exactly.
I get it.
The wives were property.
Speaking to that, and today I think that manifests itself in the bro culture, where men rather play video games all day with their friends
Yes.
than this, and all they want to do with their girlfriend is sex.
Yeah.
We can have sex, but I'm gonna spend my time, energy, and space with my homeboys.
Yes.
And I think it's the same idea. It's like that's their, instead
That's
of
a
being
good point.
touchy-feely,
Maybe
that's their
there's
way of.
something natural about that.
Yeah.
If there's something that happens through centuries.
I think the
think-
definition of
Yeah.
queer or the definition of gay could use some altering in itself to not be so physical and to be partially emotional. Because some people may have that romance and it may be real. I even had straight best friends who, like, it was really surprising that when we got to those places, but I wasn't getting dick at night. They would always go somewhere else to get, and that separation was always really interesting.
What do you mean, like they were affectionate?
They were so, I mean, they would treat me like we were in a relationship. And it often would feel that way.
I know exactly
But, for you, but how you internalize that, it felt that way for them. It was just them embracing who you were as a person.
Nah, I don't think, but I think just from my experience, it wasn't them just embraced, like it was how they embraced me specifically.
Right.
And like you could see that there was an attraction there, but I don't think they recognized it as something that would identify sexually.
Like I always tell people that I've been, as a gay male, I've been treated very well by a lot of straight men around me in my life, like friends and stuff like that. They open doors for me. They cater to. They want to know how I'm feeling, or if I'm around their friends, they're protective of me. I've experienced all of that coming up.
But that's almost a double-edged sword too, because just as they're, treating you in a certain way, which probably makes you feel more feminine, not female, but feminine, they can, on the same hand, also just be enjoying being more masculine, enjoying being the man. I could pretend to be the man with him, because you know what? I don't really have to do. I could just pretend it with you. So it may not even be about you. And I guess that comes to my point, where I think that in general, people just have to, to answer your question, people have to begin to value things that aren't masculine, value femininity, value what the gay man has to bring, value what the transgendered person has to bring. And I think, once we can start doing that, then we can see good in other things.
I feel like the way that you get to that, though, it's a way you have to trick people into things. Is that you get masculine guys to do feminine things, and it's like other people are like, oh, that's okay to do now. So that's the real tea.
Remember the campaign?
You get
Real
them
men wear pink.
Yeah, when you get them to a place
Remember
where
that
they feel
campaign?
comfortable, and they're like,
oh yeah,
Real men wear pink.
Yes,
that's literally how you have to do
That's
with
like
society now. People, you can't teach people. You can't lay books out in front of people nowadays. You have to go like, hey, this, and you trick them into learning things. That's the way you do it.
When you talked about the spectrum, and I look at it as a pendulum, where you have a man who is, ultra masculine, and you would never know that he liked men, and then you have someone who wants to transgender, and they want to go from male to female or female to male, whatever it is, and then there's that whole gray spectrum. This we were talking about earlier. That whole gray spectrum, and when I first was introduced to this, it was introduced to me as you're in the life. So I was like, oh, in the life, okay. So I don't necessarily have to identify as being gay. I can identify as being in the life. But then I had a problem with a drag queen. I just couldn't, in my head, I couldn't until,
That's right.
and I agree with you. And in my head, I was introduced to some drag queens, and also I was educated. And I agree with you on that aspect of it, that the education does come into play, and that is that, you know, what makes you think that you're the standard? And in your head, you think you're the standard, and then and then you branch off from that. When instead of that, you're in the middle of the pendulum somewhere. You need to find out where you are and how you identify, and be comfortable in wherever you identify at, where that person that you have a problem with no longer is a threat.
Yeah.
But I think
We have
that's
some
exactly
very-
what it is. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think that's exactly what it is. That is toxic masculinity.
That's right.
To be a person of the LGBTQ spectrum and then say someone in the spectrum is less than, or even think that in some regard, is exactly what it is. I think it's exactly that. And I mean, because you can even go in any club or bar right now.
Listen.
And everybody,
Yes.
whether it's heterosexual or homosexual, really, in real life, everybody will say, ain't nobody here. Maybe it's in there with their friend, ain't nobody here today.
That's not to
It's
say
a
not
mess.
enough.
And half of it has to do, I believe, with toxic masculinity.
And
it revolves around that in some way.
But that
It
is
is
the
other
sheep thing.
gay people are not good enough.
Right, this person is not, they're a little less feminine, I don't like the way they have their hat, they got an earring,
And then,
you know, but then, you know, go home and say ain't nobody out there.
That's more of a statement about yourself, though. Like, there's like I feel like a lot of times when people say there's nobody out there for them, it's literally just like I'm not. It's like it's them saying like I'm saying it's them saying I'm not good enough. Like it's saying I'm not good enough. It's when they say I don't. There's nobody out there.
They don't want you.
No,
That's it. They don't want you.
But no,
that's not-
I know that's not what you're saying, but I'm saying that a lot of the reason is that when they come from a place of there's nobody out there, you know, what you're saying is that they don't want you. But see, that's what you're saying. They don't want you because they're not giving you, they're not feeding off of you. They don't come to you.
Well, no, it's
They're
not about
close
anybody
to you.
else. It literally is it's a reflection of themselves. It's like you're going out there looking for something to complete yourself. You're saying there's nothing out here for me to complete myself.
That's not reverse psychology because
whenever you hear somebody
I
say that.
have a friend that will come into a room and say, "Oh, nobody here is my type." Whole time, about 5 or 6 people he want to have sex with, but he'll quickly say it before he gets turned down by anybody.
Right.
You know, yeah, he don't like rejection, so he'll, you know what I'm talking
But
about.
you know, rejection is fatal. No.
But
To a lot of people, it is so
It
fatal
is.
to them.
And before it happens,
And I'm
they
one of
have
those
to
people.
You already talk about like
You're not
things
recruiting.
that happen when you're a child, like
Yes.
the way you're raised, which
Yes.
is different way, you know, white versus black and race.
Right.
I feel like that is from just speaking for myself. I at 34 years old, over the last couple of weeks, talking to my aunt, things like that, I just discovered that there was a generational issue with not showing affection.
Wow.
So when I'm in a relationship, I'm bitching and moaning about you don't appreciate me. You don't express your love for me. Why don't you tell me more? Or it's like, and I'm asking myself, why do I need somebody to tell me every week that they're still in it? That they still love me, that they still want to be here. And then from a therapeutic perspective, I realized that that's because as a child, I didn't get it. My mom was always going because she was working. I was taking care of my brothers. My mom never told me she loved me. When I would get in trouble, it was always stop crying, get somewhere and sit down. You shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. It was never any consolation. So then when I told this to my aunt, she was like, well, your mother got that from our mother. And I was like, huh? She said, oh yeah. She said, I got beat up in school one day. And I came home and I wanted to hug. And your grandmother, my mother told me, go pray.
Well, that's right, but like, what do you do
Stuff like
about
that.
that though? What do you do about that?
Well,
It happened, but what do you do then? Like, what do you do to change that? Like, what do you do to fix yourself?
No, that's what I'm getting to. So what happens is because I know that now, I have to now go back and say, okay, what kind of, first of all, I'm going to therapy.
Okay.
That's first.
Which is rare.
So I can talk through those things with a professional. There's some things you can do self-help with, but sometimes you need people to pull things out.
I have a question.
And
for
that's
you.
not just your best friend, right?
Do you feel like you have the mental capacity to handle that, like to actually
to go through therapy?
To even adjust like that, not receiving love, and reacting now from it, do you think you even have the mental capacity to change or to alter or to adjust that?
Yeah, because I like to be, I believe I do, because I've always been I like challenges. I've always been a open-minded, rational thinker.
Okay.
I operate in solely like logic. If it don't make sense to me, I'm not doing it. If I have a conversation with you, it's gonna be like, I'm gonna be the defense, you're gonna be the litigation, and we're gonna go back and forth, and then you'll convince me. And if you convince me, I'm convinced. Yeah.
So let me-
So yeah, but I have that privilege though. I think something that we don't always give people is that some people don't have the mental capacity to alter, to adjust, to even receive help all
They
the
will
time.
overcompensate
So when it comes
for
to
it,
like toxic masculinity, if this is how you grew up for 16 years, and by the time you got to your 17th year, right when you were getting out of high school, you went to college, and now this is all you know. That's why we still see tall teens being born.
Well, let me add to that. You said mental capacity. I agree. A lot of people don't have the mental capacity or the emotional intelligence to even understand what the hell is going on.
Self-analyzation is so important. We have
self-actualization. But what happens when you do the exact, because you didn't receive it, then if you're not receiving it, then you will overcompensate.
You will.
Because you feel like you just can't get to the line, you have to shoot past the line in order to kind of catch up to where you were. So your expectation could have been for whoever you dated that they have to like flood you with all this emotion and flood you with all this affection and flood you with all this. And then
while you're doing that though,
it starts to get on your nerves.
What you're doing. But I was getting on their nerves.
Right.
But I'm just saying,
at some point, that's going to be a bit much when you have that much.
What's that in
compounded?
That's what I'm saying. Well, okay, so answering your question, what he just said, that's something that, if say for instance, if my current relationship for whatever reason didn't work out, I would go into my next relationship saying, by the way, I got some shit.
I got some shit. Right. And some of us need a lot of attention. You know, there's some people who are high maintenance. And there's some people who are low maintenance, and I know I'm a high maintenance person, but at the same time, I can't apply that to my husband because it's not fair to him to have to be all of that I need him to be. He can't be everything I need him to be, but I need him to. What I do need him to be is I have segmented that in my life. Says as long as I'm getting this, I can't expect him to fondle all over me every time he sees me.
Right.
Even though in my head I'm thinking that's how you show love.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't hold him hostage.
Come on.
To that. I can't hold him.
So
But if he's not built that way, then I'm going to create a situation in our relationship that doesn't need to exist because that's my ism.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let me just. This is a great discussion topic, but we have to reel it in, okay? Because it's past.
You don't.
Okay.
You don't.
Okay, great. So
okay,
It's up to you as the facilitator how much longer you want to go, but the room is out.
So I do have other obligations. As a facilitator.
So that part.
So I mean, but are you going to this way? Huh? Yeah. Okay, great. So because I have a client I have to do an intake with, I do have a private practice, so I have a client to meet. But we can keep this going, okay?
To like
7:30. 7:30 minutes is okay?
Another 15 minutes.
Another 15 minutes? Okay.
So you could for 15 minutes?
No, I'm good for another 10 minutes. But I want somebody to say one thing that you took away from this group tonight. What did you learn? What did you take away? What did you bring about this topic? Last month we talked about fetishes and kinks. I want to talk about a little more something a little serious now. This time, toxic masculinity. What does that mean? What does that look like? How can we help this issue? Because remember, it's destructive.
I think because for me, based on what I'm hearing, it's a lot of work that needs to be done around that subject and a lot of undoing. And I feel like in order to undo, the parties have to be local participants in the undoing. And they can't, like everyone's not gonna be open to correcting things that have traumatized them. They might want to rest in that, and that's the only way they want to see it. But unless we are willing to be more understanding and willing to have conversations with people about this subject, I think it's the same thing with homosexuality. We had to have a conversation to get to where we are now.
Gotcha.
And I feel like toxic masculinity is one of those things. Like, have a conversation, like, ask the whys. Like, why do you feel so offended by this? Why do you feel so strong about that? And and get people to think. And sometimes when you get people to think about what they're doing and actually put a why behind it, and it changes. It changes your perspective. It helps them change their mind.
Yeah, who else? One thing you took away from tonight, yes.
Kind of, I wouldn't say piggyback because I hate that word, but like just like going with what he said. I think also people are guarded a lot of times, and a lot of times some of the facade that we put on, not even necessarily a learned or taught behavior. It's just who people are sometimes. And I guess my question to oppose back to you or the room is, what happens when you encounter the resistant person and the change may be for the betterment of them, but they don't see it because they're so stuck? Like, do we stay there with them to say, no, you need to do this, you should do this, or I suggest and recommend, or do you walk away? Like,
I don't think you walk away. I think you try a different approach.
Well, sometimes you have to break the wheel to make the wheel. You gotta break
it down.
You have to not break it down. You have to break
it
them. No, not break them.
Sometimes
you need to go up level.
You bend it, don't break it, just bend it. What you trying to say?
You have to. A lot of the masculinity is about feeling powerful, and if you make somebody feel powerless, that's sometimes how they understand. There's sometimes they.
That's the person's power. The whole thing is like offensive, and the next thing you know, you put an altercation.
Well, see, there's many ways to get to powerless. There's many ways that you get there. But if they have a taste of that, sometimes they snap back to be like, okay.
I was more so thinking making a person, like, I know when it came to, I'm just going to go from the premise of being gay, that I had more success with making people feel comfortable with me when I was instead of me trying to force them to say this is what it is.
Well, he said confrontational. He said that's a completely different animal.
Right.
If they're receptive to it, you get
how
a
do you
different
break people
treatment.
down when you don't confront them?
We're not going
I don't think we have enough time.
Okay, one thing you learned, one thing you took away from tonight. Anybody else?
I would say
One thing you took away.
I think that in order for us to be able to better accept people, we have to understand the value of other people.
Yeah.
And I think what he's saying goes along with what you said before. It is not that you have to break people down, but you made him understand the value your best friend, and you became their godfather because you helped him to understand the value of a gay person. Before, he probably just thought, he didn't think where it was necessary because you think men should be plowing on the fields. But some men are also good for helping you keep your marriage.
Right.
So I think the best thing we can do as individuals to be ourselves and to be an open gay person to help other people understand that, number one, sexuality is a spectrum, and that number two is we're not some aliens from a different planet. Like, you're yourself. And if you like me, then I'm a gay person. It just is what it is.
Thank you, Adrian. Brandon, like you can tell me.
You call names out? No one else's name.
Absolutely.
So we called our own names earlier.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I am the honorable. No. So yes, I did come late, so I do apologize for being late, but thank you for welcoming me. So I came late in the conversation, but I think a lot of my takeaway, for at least for myself, number one, I'm upset that I missed so many other ones. Because this brings me joy. Just seeing black men around a circle just having conversation, healthy conversation, brings me joy. So for that, thank you. And I will be at the next one too.
That's great. Anybody else? Something took away.
My takeaway,
Yes,
I
sir.
believe, would be allow yourself to be open and not necessarily want to be involved in, but be open to the idea that there's something outside of you that should be embraced. And that doesn't mean
Even
that
as a gay person.
regardless of what it is, because that goes across gender, sexuality, everything. If you're just open, then nothing is a threat, as you were saying. That you don't feel threatened by anything, and you can accept or reject whatever comes your way. But the fact of the matter is, it's still you have allowed that in, and it just makes you grow as a person.
Absolutely. Yes, Brian.
I took away that being masculine doesn't mean taking out the trash.
You know what? You would never say it. You in luck. way.
I would say, like, I really appreciate, perspectives. I live my life in that world. I like perspectives. I like the fact that people think for themselves. And I think it's really important that we continue to use intent and be intentional in making sure that we curb or recognize our behaviors, that we can do better and be better for ourselves. And I think environments like this help, especially people of color, like we mentioned earlier. You are white, right? No, I'm just- you are.
Ask him the same. Like, you are white, aren't you?
Only on Wednesdays. No, but I think that is also important for us as Black men, as people of color, to recognize that this could potentially be something that is, cultural, especially the way that it happens.
Yes,
right? I mean, you go to other places, other countries, you might say, all these men, I mean, what are they doing? Especially like Asia or places like that where people are a little more soft and whatever. I've never been to Asia, but I mean, you can go down to Chinatown right now. But there is things that we may call effeminate that they would not necessarily call in their society. So we have to also recognize the societal impact of that as well. So I appreciate the different perspectives and the great conversation. So thank you. This is my first one. I'm always working, so I hope to make it again.
Thank you for making time out tonight. Thank you guys. Jared, you want to ask me?
I just find it interesting that everybody has an understanding of what toxic masculinity is already. We didn't necessarily need to, I guess we all came in with our idea of what it was. I don't think we necessarily needed to do that to really have an understanding for what we were talking about and where we were going. And, I just wonder what it would be like to get a lot of people who we would label as toxic masculine or with those behaviors, get them in a room and
you're in a room with all men.
And you're asking questions and you're having a conversation.
I've seen it go wrong enough times to be like a room full of.
You held a forum.
I've seen it happen, and I've seen it happen numerous times.
Well, Francis
I've been with somebody.
so maybe he's.
I think it depends on who the facilitator is.
Right.
To be able to control the But even when you do like a lot of alpha males in one room, I think naturally it's just gonna happen. Naturally, somebody's gonna fall back. Somebody's gonna naturally move to the front.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
You have anything to add? Take away tonight?
Well, no, just that I really enjoyed the discussion and I hope to come back.
Thank you. So, what's the bottom line? The bottom line is ... This is our group, our monthly
He's
mentors.
wise.
And I love it. I
was listening to him talk all day. Like, what else you guys say?
Well, get us hungry.
Oh, really?
You would love talking. Y'all should connect. And this is another reason why we meet. This is about networking, about connecting.
Come on.
What's the bottom line? Why are we all here? So
to support each other.
actually, right. I was brought in as a facilitator to increase the engagement numbers for MSMs of color. Right? And what does that mean? That can mean a variable of things. But this is connecting. This is networking. This is tribe right here. What we're doing. Right? So I'm grateful to have this opportunity to be the facilitator, for these men, monthly men's support group. Relationship means who I am in relation to you. Right? Who I am in relation to each and every one of you. And who we are in relation to each other. What's the bottom line? So thank you guys for being here tonight for our monthly men's groups. We're talking about toxic masculinity. And I look forward to seeing you guys next month.
Absolutely.
Yes.